Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Minutes of Audio. Today we're going to be talking about the Nervous Condition self-titled album. If you like what we have to say, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Before we get started in the review, just so everyone knows, the Nervous Conditions is the band that eventually formed to become Black Country New Road. And so yeah, Carl, what did you think about the album?
I think the album was really cool as an experience knowing what they eventually turned into. It's really interesting seeing, I guess, like the genesis of what eventually would become, at this point, like such a widely regarded band, even though they only have two records, it's interesting to see kind of like what their sound, how their sound sort of progressed and morphed into. And you definitely get like traces of what like later they would be doing and like sounds that they haven't quite mastered yet that they would later go on to perfect. So I think from that perspective at least it was really interesting. It was a really interesting listen.
Yeah, especially with the fact that at least two of these songs do sound like they're good enough to be on their first album.
Yeah.
Um, the sound is very reminiscent of the first album. You could tell that without this album, we would have never have gotten the sound they had on the first one they released as Black Country New Road, which I liked. But it started off with a pretty killer track called "The President," which, in my opinion, is probably the best song on the album,
Same.
and is also the shortest song on the album. That's not an opinion, though. That's just a fact.
It's a really like again like it's a tight song. There aren't going too much out of the box for it. It reminds me of the more like darker cuts from some of the records. Uh, and yeah, like it does sound like something you would hear on their 2021 release. And it sounds, I guess, like the most musically mature out of the bunch. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the like one of the last songs they made for the record, because it does sound like I said, like the most mature out of the rest of the track list.
It sounds the most mature, but the other songs on the album, they still do sound good. They just sound pretty minimal, even though they're not minimal. But like songs like "PS Time" and "Follow Till Last Kicked In," they're not good enough to be on one of the Black Country albums, but they're still pretty good songs, especially considering that it's not even the same vocalist on Black Country Road, which the guy on this one, Connor Brown, he does have a good voice.
It fits. It fits this type of style. He's always going to be compared to Isaac, because Isaac is much more of a unique talent, much more expressive and more versatile, I'd say. But so you're always going to say, well, he's not as good as Isaac, but I still think he held his own on this one.
Yeah, and it did sound like that Isaac did take some inspiration from Connor Brown's vocals, because they do sound kind of similar, but not completely similar.
Yeah.
But
I would say Connor has a lot more aggression and sort of like that gnarly
attitude to his
yeah voice. I'd say that's like the main difference.
But probably the worst song on this album was the third track on it, called "Zach's Anniversary." Zach doesn't have a C in it, keep in mind. But yeah, everything about this track just kind of seems off. The bass line just feels off. The instrument, nothing really sounds good in this song. It kind of sounds hollow.
It's like it's a minimal sounding track, but not minimal in a good way. Most minimalist tracks focus on a sort of unique atmosphere and sound that, even though there isn't a lot going on, you in a weird way, like it still feels like a coherent track. With this, it sounds like a mediocre band's attempt at like minimalism, and then when like the 50 different instruments come crashing in, it doesn't sound so much as it doesn't sound creative so much as it sounds amateurish.
Yeah, I agree with what he has to say about that.
But yeah, I mean, besides that track, most of the other ones on here I felt like were either like above average to good. Just a solid track list. Again, besides that one, definitely not the high marks that like again the later records would achieve, but for such like a young group at this point, right? Like at this point when they made the album, I mean it was a good showing. I think, and I still like revisit some of the songs. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I really enjoyed about this album was the violin playing by Georgia Ellery and the saxophone playing by Lewis Evans.
Yeah.
Both of them, every time they performed, they really stood out on the song. Most of the times, in my opinion, they're even the highlights of the songs, even on the worst ones.
Are they still with the group today? Because
I know for a fact Lewis Evans is, because the song Mark's theme is about his uncle.
oh yeah, that's right.
Georgia Ellery, I believe she's still with the group.
I think she is, but I'm not sure. But like either way, because
Yeah,
like
she is.
yeah, because like the saxophone and like that. A lot of the times, the highlights for especially with Ants from Up There, were those like sort of secondary instruments. Not like just the bass, the guitar, the drum. Like it's these other instruments that a lot of times shine. The violin, the saxophone. And like I agree with you on this record, they really shine too. So yeah, they're instrumentally at least the highlights.
And even Isaac Wood on guitar, because he and the lead singer were the only guitarists, so Isaac was the lead guitar. He did a pretty good job as the lead guitar.
Yeah, but
he had some pretty catchy riffs.
Even still, like you could. I just think it's cool because like you can tell that they still were not at their creative peaks yet, that they're still kind of like blossoming into the style they would eventually develop into. So maybe like, I don't know about you, but maybe that's like biasing me a little bit and making me a little bit more critical, I guess, because like I know what these guys eventually did. But yeah, like, well, I was just gonna, none of this downplays like, the quality of the album, but.
Yeah, this knowing what they turned into, this does make the album not stand out as much. But I still think it's a pretty fucking good record for a band's first ever release.
Yeah, same.
Like, this is better than most other bands' best album.
I don't know.
Not most, but like
I was gonna say I wouldn't go that
bands.
far, but definitely like. A fair amount of bands' best album, I think, is reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, like the smaller bands that no one cares about.
Yeah. But I think that wraps it up, right?
What were your top 3 songs from the album? You know what? Since this is a small album, let's just do 2 and 2.
2 favorites.
2 favorites, 2 least favorites.
Well,
but 2 favorites first.
2 favorites was The President. And maybe Followed Kicked In.
Followed Kicked In?
Yeah.
Mine would be The President and then PS Time.
Gotcha.
How about you?
For least favorite?
Songs.
Anniversary. And
Can't Steal Mine.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have another one, because I feel like all the other ones are like good enough to where I wouldn't say like they're least favorite. So just that one.
I would say Zach's Anniversary and then Sussex Law.
Gotcha.
I'm not a huge fan of that one. It's not a bad song, but
it drags on for a little while.
Yeah, it's like what, like 13 minutes.
Yeah, it goes on for a long time. Don't. I'm gonna change my pick to yours, actually. I'll change it.
Sussex Hall. Yeah,
I'm stealing your flow.
always catching the wave, never crazy. Shaking my head. Phil, what would you give it out of 10?
Probably a 6.5. I feel like a solid 6.5 is respectable.
That's respectable, but I disagree.
Oh shit.
I think it's a 6.6. No, it's a 7.
Man, you're just not as critical as me. You don't have the critical eye like I do.
No, I don't know. I think if you didn't have the aftertext of the other two albums, then I think you would have rated this higher.
I might have. I don't know.
It's kind of like comparing Radiohead's first album to what they eventually became.
That's
yeah.
It's
still good for what it is, but it's just not. It can't be as good as the other shit.
Yeah, it makes it like almost depreciate in value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so if you like what you heard, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Our next thing that we should be doing is going to be a news video, but I think our next review will be Beach House, if I'm correct.
You are correct.
I am correct. So it will
just this one.
It will be Beach House. I'm sure if most of you were listening to the EPs they dropped, you've already listened to like 75% of the album before it even came out, but
I should have done that.
Yeah, I was tempted
now I have to sit my ass down for an hour and a half. Yeah. Beach House.
Hey, the first EP though, because I listened to the first one, it was good. So maybe we'll be.
I listened to like the first 3 songs on it, and it sounded very samey.
Yeah, but good samey. Okay, so maybe we'll be back here on like Friday or Monday or whenever we release it, and share its praise. But until then, see you guys. Peace.